Hi folks, it's SammyDiamonds, your friendly neighbourhood Age of Empires 2 console player here, and today I've got a really fun one for you. We are jumping into Arena on the PS5, and I'm going to walk you through a super tasty Jurchens fast castle strategy that absolutely cooked me when I first came up against it on the ladder a couple of days ago against its Guts, formerly known as Stone Please. So naturally, I did what every normal Age of Empires 2 player did. What did I do? I went back, watched the game where I got my ass handed to me, and I saw what my opponent did, looked at the strategy, saw it was one that I hadn't come up against before, and yeah, I've taken it for myself and stolen it completely without any remorse. As they say, good artists imitate, great artists steal. So today we're going to break down the build order, talk through the strategy a bit, and this is the third time I played this strat. So let's find out whether third time really is the charm when it comes to the Jurchens. But before we get into it, as my scout looks off into the abyss, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to everyone who's been super supportive of me trying this YouTube thing out. Obviously, I'm still learning, still figuring out what works, and yeah, it genuinely means so much that people are giving their time to watch, leave feedback, and help me improve. So, thank you. I really appreciate it. So the matchup we're playing today is the Jurchens versus the Way, both civs from the Three Kingdoms DLC, and honestly, this matchup's pretty terrifying. I'm playing on the cross-platform ladder, you know, the general one with all the PC and mouse and keyboard players, and the Way economy can absolutely cook, because every time they research an ecotech, they get a free villager. So, you know, give it a little while in feudal and they'll be racing ahead of you. On top of that, they've got amazing cavalry archers with the Janbei riders, and the Tiger Cavalry unique unit is an absolute nightmare once it gets rolling. So yeah, if you let the Way boom comfortably, especially into late game, you're going to have a bad time, which means actually this strat that I'm going to show you today is a really good counter to this sort of move where your opponent is booming into eco heavily, and all that matters is hitting those timings. Now, I'm not an amazing player by any means, but with these sort of cheese strategies, it gives you an advantage. So as I'm just pulling in my my goats here, or my mouflon, I believe they are, I'll talk you through a little bit, because I want this channel not just to be about build orders. I also want it to be a little bit about, you know, the history that we obviously all love playing this RTS, you know, and what draws us to Age of Empires 2, I think, in part, isn't just the nostalgia for a game that came out 30 odd years ago, but it's the fact that it brought so many of us into, you know, the Middle Ages across the world as well, and introduced us to campaigns, civilizations, and stories that we perhaps wouldn't have otherwise encountered. And the Jurchens, even though they're a newer civ, they're, I think, a really cool civ design. They match up with their historical upbringing quite interestingly. So the Jurchens were a Tungistic people from Northeast Asia around what's now Manchuria, and they eventually founded the Jin dynasty in China after overthrowing the Lao dynasty in the 1100s. And they were famous for their cavalry, hunting traditions, and military organization. And you can see how that's overlaid into things like their hunt bonuses, etc., in the Age of Empires game. And I think a lot of their identity in AoE too leans into that frontier horse archer meets heavy cavalry nomadic meets farmer vibe that was really interesting. You know, if you want a fun fact, the Jurchens are ancestors of the Manchus, which would later go on to found the Qing dynasty and rule China for centuries. So they're really integral to the history of China and the Chinese civilization. One of their biggest bonuses in game, as my scout hunts in the darkness, is around their food eco, and the fact that their hunt doesn't decay. So as I talk through the build order specifically in a little moment, you'll see under the TC at the moment, I've got loads of villagers hunting both boar and sheep. Oh god, I did the classic controller double click of select all villagers there. That was a disaster. Closely averted. Please pretend that I didn't do that as I bring in my second boar. But it means that you just get a little bit more of an efficient food eco while you're bringing these guys in, because you can let your villagers be spread out over loads of different decaying beasts and creatures, and it won't penalise you the way it will for other civilizations. Obviously, they also have fire at lances, or they have access to fire lances in Castle Age, and they're sort of like a combo of an early gunpowder spear unit and proto gunpowder shock infantry, and they absolutely cook. They're a wood and gold unit, so you'll see this build order is all about getting onto wood and gold relatively early, and the transition to that is really key. Um, and talking about the strat, I obviously come across Jurchens before. They're probably really well known in Arabia style maps, more open style maps for their fast castle into gunpowder, grenadier, cheese strat. Those grenadiers are pretty chunky when you've got a big group of them together. They're quite hard to beat. But on Arena, I tend to think that they don't do particularly well. And when you do random into them, or if you pick them, you are going to have to go relatively early on the aggro, I think. I think they don't hold up super great in the late game, but feel free to challenge me on that. I recently played against It's Guts, as I mentioned, and he's one of the top players on the console ladder. So if you're not familiar, he's someone who basically lives on Arena. He's part of that almost offshoot of the Clown Legion from a few years back on the main PC scene, who dominated Arena for years with their sort of weird timings, monk plays, castle drops, and all those creative Arena strategies. And I think he plays homage to them, really, with the style that he's adopted. When I played him, he hit me with this Jurchens fast castle build and absolutely cooked me. So obviously, he is a stronger player than me. He's pushing nearly 2k elo, and I'm around the 1600 mark. But even taking that into account, I think the strategy itself has potential to be really strong. So obviously, as I say, I've been trying this out, and the first time I came up against someone who was a little bit of a lower elo than me, and it felt like it was hard to tell whether the strategy was good in my hands or just my opponent being unlucky with the matchmaking. The second game felt a lot more competitive, and if you check out my Twitch, shout out, you'll see I lost, but it felt like the strategy gave me a strong early position, and I think that the game just went super late, and I just think the Jurchens struggle a bit once the game drags a bit, compared to other top tier late game civs. But this, as I said, is attempt number 3, and they say third time's the charm. So we're on our way, almost ready to click up to Castle Age, and I'm going to just take a moment and bring in the build order. So let's get into it. In a lot of ways, this is your standard fast castle setup, and it's actually not that far away from the classic Jurchens fast castle into rocket carts build, but there are a few important tweaks. In Dark Age, you're going to start with standard 6 villages going on sheep or herdables, and because of the no decay bonus on hunt, you can really make use of those deer early. So lure those deer underneath the TC as quickly as you can, because you're getting maximum efficiency from every bit of hunt food. Then send your next 4 villagers over to wood, and make sure that one of them drops a couple of houses. Villager number 11 is going to go lure that first boar, and then you want your food villagers split between the boar and the deer and the sheep underneath the town centre. And as I say, don't need to worry too much because of the Jurchens food hunt bonus. Once you hit 12 on food and 4 on wood, send the next 4 villagers over to berries and drop a mill by them. Then villagers 21 and 22 goes to gold, and that's really important because this whole point is to have enough gold banked so that by the time you hit feudal age, you can basically click straight to castle. Then 23 and 24 of your villagers are going to head back over to wood. So by the time you click feudal, you should roughly have 16 on food, 6 on wood, 2 on gold. Obviously, the hunt food is going to run out eventually. So once that starts happening, drop around 4 farms, send 1 villager from hunt over to the berries, and start shifting more villagers onto wood. And this is the key adjustment in the build. You're rebalancing the economy heavily towards wood and gold production, because the units we're making today, Fire Lancers and Rams, are primarily wood and gold units. And you actually don't need a huge farming eco early on, you just need enough food to maintain villager production and grab those upgrades. And obviously, you guys are going to be experienced fast castlers, I expect. Once you've done that build order, you'll see there that I took my villagers that were on gold to build a market, one of them that was on wood to build my blacksmith. I went 3 to build those buildings. and try to get them up as quickly as possible so that that time spent in feudal before clicking up is really at a minimum. You should have the resources perfectly lined up if the build's gone smoothly, like it has in this case. And it's while Castle Age is researching, as it is now, that you can start getting those eco upgrades like double bit axe and horse collar, and that's what I've just been picking up. And it's at this point that I've also dropped a barracks that we'll need to build our fire lancers, and I'm adding a few houses so we don't get housed when production kicks in, as I realise now, watching this recording back, I've got 4 villages completely inefficiently chopping wood. They're so far away from the others. I think I do realise that, but God, I think it might take me a while. I don't know how they went over there. I definitely clicked them more into the main bunk of that wood, but there we go. And obviously, the second we hit Castle Age, we're going to drop a siege workshop, and that's really where the fun begins, as I start chasing Red's scout around the map. This might take a while. I think he's on auto scout. I think he's not actively trying to get away from me. He's just doing his own thing, and my scout is following him around saying, stop, let me kill you. Let me hit you with my little stick. Obviously, I'm up into Castle Age now, and because my opponent, that MP, is still in feudal because he's gone for the way eco bonuses, I'm thinking right now, okay, things are looking good for this, because if I can catch him off guard before he really starts to get into position to make military, then I'm feeling good about it. I think the advantage lies with us. As I take down Red Scout, and that's nice. It just means that I also now have map scouting, and those wood villages are still being very inefficient. I think the principles of this game, or this strategy, sorry, is pressure and early pressure. We want to get fire lancers out, rams out, and rams pushing, and we want to force our opponent, in this case the way player, to react before their eco starts spiraling out of control. And I think it's really a really useful one, as I put a few more just to balance out some of the villagers that were on berries. As the berries expire, I put 3 of them on farm, so that we've got seven villagers on food and everyone else on gold and wood. I think if you're getting signs or indications that your opponent is trying to boom, these sort of cheese strats where you go early on arena can wreak a lot of havoc. And look, also, because I killed Red's scout, he's getting nervous and he's dropping outposts on his wall to try and get earlier line of sight on any attacks that I bring his way. And look, I've got 3 rams already. I've got I think 6 or 7 fire lancers, and I'm going to move out. These Trundle boys are a little bit slow, but they will get the job done. I'm going to keep building fire lancers and rams behind this, and keep sending them more forward. But I know that there's only going to be so long that my opponent is still in feudal, and I just want to take advantage of that fact. And if I can arrive in his wall before he gets to castle, I know I'm in a really good spot. And actually, even though I've just sped up to get across the map to save you guys watching these slow trundly boys, he only makes it to castle just before I arrive at his gate. So he's dropping a barracks, and I think maybe not the best reactions from Red in this situation. He does drop a castle. I think actually rather than a castle, walls would have been better there. My rams are now in, and this is just a moment on his perspective, and mine. I don't see his castle yet. I send my scout in to have a little look around, and it's going to pop up for me just as I take down his barracks. And as soon as I see that, I think, oh, great, fantastic, I can push forward with my rams. He's not going to have had any chance to research murder holes. He's not going to have any soldiers. In fact, as we saw a second ago, he's got 3 town centres, and now he's making the full wall behind this. But this is the beauty of it. You whack your lancers in those rams, and as the villagers come to try and beat the rams down with their tiny little villager knives, I jump out with my fire lancers. I think I've got 9 of them, and they just destroy those villagers who are trying to bait me to go into the line of fire of the castle, but I can just jump straight back into the rams. And in fact, the castle goes down, and he immediately resigns. So, yeah, it's a really powerful strategy, and I think hopefully that's something that you might consider when you're playing Jurchens if you random into them or you want to just give this shot a go. I think it's a really fun strategy. It's relatively simple because it's not too far off your average fast castle build, but as you can see, like, behind this, I'm on 43 villagers. Most of them are on wood and gold, just to keep that constant production going. I've got 2 barracks to get to, which I dropped a second one while all of that fighting on the front was going on, just so I could make sure that the production of fire lances continues. And yeah, I think it's a really good strategy. So I'm still figuring the civ out a little bit, but I really like the feel of it. It puts pressure on early, and against anyone who's booming, you're really at an advantage, I think. So please let me know what you think of the build, whether there are any optimizations I'm missing, or whether you've been trying the Jurchens yourself, because I'm genuinely loving experimenting with civs at the moment and new strategies. So if you've got other suggestions for build orders, please let me know in the comments as well. And again, just before I sign off, while I'm looking through the stats here, just another big shout out to some specific people who have been awesome in supporting me recently. Firstly, Not Atheist, also known as Fast Castle and Chill. Definitely go subscribe and check out his stuff on YouTube, because what he's doing is awesome and really entertaining. And a huge love to Vulcan Loop, Ryan P, Ponderoso, and everybody else who's dropped comments, messages, or chatted in the Discord. It genuinely means a lot. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, please keep commenting, liking, subscribing, sharing. It's what we're all about here on YouTube, isn't it? So peace and love. Catch you on the flip side.